Let's talk about past lives. And I love this topic because it really does give us a broader context of why we're in this incarnation and what are some of the lessons that we're here to learn. Okay, so you're not here randomly. This isn't your first lifetime. This isn't, if you're someone who doesn't have a spiritual practice, if you're new here, then obviously I suggest you keep an open mind as I talk about the spirit realm and I talk about how we are all part of source consciousness and we're each having a human incarnation and we've had many, many lifetimes, in fact, and each lifetime sort of builds upon the last one. And so the purpose of reincarnation and the purpose of coming into this lifetime is to learn how to resolve our soul contracts, neutralize our karma, and essentially learn to embody unconditional love, which is all I ever talk about, essentially, so that we can awaken to our essential nature. And ultimately, through this process, we free ourselves, we liberate ourselves from pain and suffering, and we reach nirvana, which is a state of enlightenment, a state of full liberation. And we come back as many lifetimes as we need to until we fully embody this state. Now, if you're stuck in 3D reality, 3D consciousness, you don't have access to this awareness, right? So you might think that your life is about, raising kids or being in a relationship or accumulating wealth and having a wonderful job or being successful or, creating some measure of success that is determined by the outside world, by external influences, pleasing others, for example. So many of us go through this human conditioning phase because it's through this conditioning phase that we understand that we start to become more intimately acquainted with our soul lessons, right? So as a soul, we elect the circumstances that we are born into. We choose our parents, we choose our circumstances, we choose how we come in. We also choose when we go out. We choose some of the afflictions, the situations that we're going to experience, the hardships, because these are all conditions that will create an experience of searching, an experience of wanting to go deeper within ourselves. There's got to be more to life than this, right? There's got to be more to life than what I'm living. The pain is usually what precipitates the transformation. If you're willing, some of us succumb to our pain, unfortunately, and we give up on life and we resign from this life. But for those of us that are using our free will to not give up and to learn how to be in the embodiment of unconditional love, all of our circumstances are serving our evolutionary process so that we could heal in order to get there. Okay. So one way to determine whether or not, this is from a past life, for example, little clues that you can look for is hits of intuition. You can all of a sudden feel something or know something and it feels random. It feels like there's no frame of reference for this. It's not something you learned with your mind, but it's something that you feel like you've been here before, or you've seen this before, you felt this before. That's an example of a past life experience, and it can happen in a moment. Things like deja vu, even things that seem like you're randomly afraid of, like a fear that makes no sense whatsoever. There has never been a trauma in your life, or there's never been a situation that created this fear in your life, but for whatever reason, you're afraid of this. I had an experience myself of walking, and this is one of many, many, many that I've had in this lifetime, where I walked into a Dharma hall and I knew instantly that I had been there before. Not in this life, but in previous lifetimes. I was like, oh, I've done this before. I was my first Vipassana I had ever done as a 10-day silent retreat. And I walked into this Dharma hall and I just felt like I was home. I felt like I had been here many, many, many times. I felt a sense of familiarity, a sense of welcome and warmth. And I knew that I had been, I was in a place where I've done this before. Right. And so what happens is, and you might find as well that you'll come into this incarnation with a certain gift or a certain talent. You see little children that are virtuosos, or they play the piano, or they have this extraordinary ability to sing, or whatever the gift is. These are also examples of work we've done in previous incarnations and what we came in either to continue on, to finish exploring, to bring to completion, or to heal and to neutralize and to finally learn the lesson that we might have missed out on in the previous life. Okay. So for example, if you had a really bad relationship with money in your previous lifetime, in this lifetime, and you didn't have a chance to heal that or complete it or transcend the experience so you could embody the lesson, in this lifetime, you would have picked up right where you left off, and perhaps be born into a family with money, or be born into a situation where money was the focus or the concern, where you would have to learn to find balance in your relationship with money. It's never about having and not having. It's always about being in balance with everything. And that's what karma is. It's about creating that balance, that place of neutrality. So there isn't a strong charge with you in that situation. This is, again, how we liberate ourselves. Okay. So if, for example, you have an unfinished business, as we say, with a specific individual in a past life, and you meet up in this lifetime, and you'll know, because you'll know that that type of attraction feels different. It hits different. There's a very strong pull. There's a really strong, I want to say, attraction, I guess, for lack of a better word, a really strong pull towards that person. And it can be inexplicable, and there can be feelings of familiarity and feelings of, like, obsessiveness and so on. This can point to a past life experience, and it can point to a soul contract that you have with this person. I talk about this in my other video on soul contracts. And that you're here to complete. You're here to revisit this unfinished business and somehow, learn to neutralize the karma between the two of you. Okay, so take a moment as you're listening, and perhaps when you're coming back and watching this video again from the beginning, just to hear some of these points. Look and see some of the events, situations, circumstances in your life that feel like repeated patterns, that feel like deep-rooted fears, that really don't come from any one particular place in this lifetime that you have a frame of reference for. To pay attention to your intuitive hits, or like some of those like felt experiences where you just know, I've been here before. Pay attention to the things you feel drawn to, what you want to lean towards. Perhaps there's a affinity for Native American culture, or there is an affinity for Italian culture, or whatever the thing is. Perhaps there's a natural inclination towards something. For me, it was the esoteric arts. I know that I've done some type of work in spiritual community as a facilitator in a previous incarnation, because I automatically was drawn to this very, very early on in this lifetime. It was like I already knew, right? I picked up my first pack of tarot cards when I was 13 years old. My best friend gave them to me as a gift in high school. And it was just like, I'd always had them. I'd always had them. And so this is the kind of thing I'm talking about, right? So everybody has some experience of this. So I invite you to just take a moment to really reflect on the thing that feels most familiar to you, or that you might even be resisting, the thing that keeps looping around. These are all signs and indications of a past life experience where you're either here to continue developing this ability, to continue serving in this way, or perhaps you're here to learn how to forgive and how to have compassion and how to neutralize this entanglement, this pain, and do right by this person, perhaps take responsibility for something, and fulfill whatever soul agreement you have with this person in your life. Or perhaps there's just a fear that you need to overcome and transcend. And of course, the path to all of this is always through self-compassion, self-forgiveness, forgiveness of others. I'll talk about more about that in a minute, and deep unconditional love. In fact, if you just dedicate your life to embodying radical unconditional love for yourself in every area of your life, you will have used this lifetime for what it's meant for. This is the purpose of this human incarnation. And the benefits of embodying unconditional love, I mean, they're endless, but it sort of recontextualizes your whole experience. The success comes easy, the money comes easy, the relationships come easy, the relationship with spirit comes easy. Everything starts to feel effortless and flowful, because at that level of consciousness, at that level of unconditional love, we merge with 5D. We have access to these realms. We are in this flowful state, as we talk about, in spiritual community and in healing circles. We talk about this flow state, being in flow and being in that effortless experience of God, of spirit, moving through your body, where it starts to feel really impersonal. Okay. And impersonal means I've healed my attachments. I've healed my wounds. I've made peace with this human life, this 3D life, and I'm aware of myself. I've awakened to myself as an expression of source consciousness. Okay. This is what we're all here to accomplish. So as much as it can feel really important to get the job, or be in the relationship, or make the money, or do the 3D thing that you need to do, it's not about the circumstances. I cannot emphasize that enough. I think I say this every week. It's really about using the circumstances to as a container, as a mirror to show us, where am I not loving myself more fully, more freely? Where am I not letting go? Where am I still attached? Where am I still in pain and creating suffering because I'm resisting the lesson that my life experience is trying to lead me through, right? Your soul elected this lifetime and all of the experiences you're having so that you can learn to feel into them and embrace them and develop equanimity and dissolve your resistance and merge into this state of inner peace. Okay. And this is a beautiful experience. It's what I'm living as far as learning to neutralize my karma. I look at my own reactions and resistances. I look at my own judgments. Judgment is a beautiful place to start from. Okay. So if you're a person who has a lot of judgments of yourself, of course, what the relationship with self always mirrors the relationship with others. So if you have a lot of judgments of yourself, then you start to heal those by embodying unconditional love, by learning to accept yourself with empathy and deep compassion. As you start to collapse your own internal judgments, your gaze, your view, your perception of the world around you starts to soften as well. When the world starts to appear more benevolent, more kind, you start to see human beings as expressions of source, and you can see the pain that they're in. Rather than feeling attacked or threatened by their behavior or offended by their behavior, we start to see that they're just in pain and they're just trying to get their needs met and they don't have access to a higher way of operating. Okay. So this is a really powerful place to live from. It makes being a human so much more enjoyable, so much more liberating. And this is where we can use our past life information to really inform our current experience and say, I can see that this is something that I've carried over. I can see that this is something that I'm still working through. This is what my soul is here to experience, so I can fulfill my soul contract and neutralize my karma and ultimately find inner peace, which is what we're talking about tonight. Okay. And so again, I said I would talk a little bit more about forgiveness. Forgiveness is very powerful. There's no, and I talk about this in my inner work containers. If you've ever done any one-to-one with me coaching or inner child healing work with me, there's no such thing as a justified resentment. Okay. So we can feel resentful. It's normal. It's human. I experience it. We feel resentful because someone behaves in a way that we don't like or does something against what they said they were going to do or doesn't hold up their end of the bargain or whatever the situation is. Holding on to that resentment is blocking you from embodying unconditional love. It's actually keeping you hostage and holding you prisoner to very low, toxic vibrational states that will block you from experiencing peace. And if I'm contracted in some area of my life, I'm limited in terms of what I can call in, what I can experience, the joy, the peace, the abundance, and so on. Okay, so it's very important. I apologize. It's full moon tonight, which I forgot to talk about, and so my dogs are howling. Thank you for your patience. I'll mention that in a second. So again, we want to look at forgiveness as being the gateway. It's in higher spiritual community, we can say that there's nothing to forgive, and that would be true, but it's not true if you're holding on to resentments. Okay, so the act of forgiveness is a really important portal that opens up higher states of consciousness for us. It allows us to experience unconditional love and to liberate ourselves from the burden of anger and bitterness and judgment. And again, all of those heavy anchoring emotions that keep us stuck in 3D, that keep us stuck in the density of being unable to really feel into what spirit has for us. You know, that the experience of feeling like we're an expression of source consciousness, as I'm talking about tonight. Okay. So again, forgiveness as a practice, as a ritual, as a way of liberating ourselves, as a way of detaching from what has happened, you know, of uninvesting, unhooking ourselves from people that have hurt us in the past, keeping in mind that whatever whatever, when attention goes, energy flows. So if you were thinking about someone and you're constantly ruminating about them and, you know, you're investing in some sort of relationship with them with your thinking mind, even if you don't have access to them in 3D, you're creating energetic cords. And so you're attaching yourself to this person. And so it's the way we unhook ourselves is to bring our attention back to our own internal landscape, our own inner experience, and deciding how we want to live. And practicing forgiveness after we've, you know, received empathy for our experience and we've healed our wounds and we've, you know, we're feeling more empowered and we've sort of rebuilt our self-worth. We don't want to do any bypassing in terms of our healing work. We can't jump to forgiveness if we're not ready to, but doing the work to get us ready to forgive is an important peace in terms of neutralizing karma and using this lifetime for what it's meant for, so that you're not repeating the same lessons in the next incarnation over and over and over again. Okay, so this is so important. Forgiveness is a portal that takes us into a higher state of consciousness. And once we're in that higher state of consciousness, then we can look back and say, yeah, there was nothing to forgive. Yeah, because we cannot be attacked or threatened or offended if we are living in a higher state of consciousness, if we're experiencing that pure peace, that pure God energy moving through us. Okay. And so that's a really important part. And it's a wonderful technique. Meditation, self-regulation, meeting your triggers with empathy and deep compassion, learning to breathe so you can do the somatic release. So you're releasing stuck energy from your body. Of course, I talk about this every week. And using that forgiveness work to really look at some of those relationships in this current incarnation so that you can embody unconditional love. Okay. And that is helping you make the most of your karmic lessons, what you've carried over, and what you're going to bring into the next life, which is hopefully peace and abundance and joy and service, right? Because it's wonderful to be awakened and to be alive and open and fully self-expressed. And it's even more beautiful to serve from this place of awareness so that we can help each other heal and help each other grow. Of course, this is my wish for you, for me, and